Greetings. If you are new, thanks for dropping by. To my subscribers, thank you for tuning in once again to JT on the Go. It is early in the morning and very chilly out as we're standing in front of King Street Station in Seattle, Washington. We'll be traveling to Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada on the Amtrak Cascades service. So let's get this international train trip started.
Our trip starts at the magnificent King Street Station, which was built by the Northern Pacific and Great Northern Railways in 1906 and opened on May 10th of that year. It is located in downtown Seattle, right next door to T-Mobile Park, home to the Seattle Mariners, and Lumen Field, home to the Seattle Seahawks. We can hardly see the exteriors because it's dark outside. I'll talk about the interiors a little later. We are here to travel to Vancouver, Canada on the Amtrak Cascades service. If you're going to Vancouver like us, you have to check in at this counter. Up here, they will look at your passport and give you a special tag to put at your seat. This is also where you can check your bags to Vancouver. Because this is one of two Amtrak routes that go into Canada, you're going to need your passport for this trip. King Street Station has two levels. This station was neglected for years, but a $55 million project restored it in 2013. A lot of the station's interior was restored to what it looks like now. It is one of the nicest train stations on the West Coast and historically significant in the region. There are 3 different Amtrak trains that start or finish in Seattle. 2 are long-distance trains, the Coast Starlight to Los Angeles and the Empire Builder to Chicago, and ours, the Amtrak Cascades service, the only corridor train service that comes to Seattle. People line up here for departures to Vancouver. What we see here is our train number, its departure time, and the number of stops the train will be making on the way to Vancouver. The trip from Seattle to Vancouver will take 4 hours. Our train number is 516, the first of 2 Amtrak Cascade trains that travel into Vancouver a day. Coach class on this trip costs $84. Our track is track 5 by gate 5, which is one of King Street's tracks for northbound departures. The Amtrak Cascades corridor stretches between Vancouver, British Columbia and Eugene, Oregon. But the majority of Amtrak Cascades trains travel between Seattle, Washington and Portland, Oregon, the 2 major cities in the Pacific Northwest. Only 2 Amtrak trains travel a day into Vancouver, the first from Seattle and the second from Portland. And there are only 2 that go to Eugene from Seattle. This service is also known to be one of the most unique corridor trains in the Amtrak system because it is the only train in North America that runs Talgos. Here comes our train to Canada. It is led by a Siemens SC44 Charger, and yes, a Talgos Series 8. I thought I wasn't going to film it because most Cascade trains were running with Horizon coaches. Remember me screwing up the boarding for coach on the Northeast Regional between DC and New York? Well, I learned my lesson and was one of the first on the train. Coach class here is also free seating, so this time we are getting the seats we prefer. Always aim to be on the first batch of coach passengers on board. There are only 2 Talgos Series 8s built and they're both owned by the state of Oregon, and this is one of those 2, which runs daily between Seattle and Vancouver. Other Cascades trains were running with Horizon coaches after the pandemic and the retirement of the Talgos Series 6. Amtrak Cascades has 2 classes, the standard business class and coach class. The Cascades coach at the front is where the checked baggage is loaded onto the train. In the front is the Siemens SC44 Charger in the Amtrak Cascades paint scheme. We are preparing for departure. These screens are on the doors and they're only on when the train is stopped at a station. Each coach is only connected by 1 axle. Here we go, departing to Vancouver, British Columbia. The scenic side of this train is on the left when heading northbound because we will be traveling along Puget Sound. Amtrak found out about the Talgos after going to Europe to solve their modernization problems. The paint scheme of gold, white, brown, and green is a sharp departure from the average Amtrak paint scheme. They chose this paint scheme for the Cascades so the trains can complement the scenery of the route. We are also traveling on the northern line of the Seattle Sounder, which goes between Seattle and Everett, Washington. Our first stop will be Edmonds, Washington. On our way out of Seattle, we are coming on our first site. That is the Bollard Locks, which is another must-see if you visit Seattle to see the fish ladder. I remember visiting it when I was younger. Now we're starting our trip along Puget Sound. Fun fact, Amtrak also has throughway connection buses that go to Vancouver from Seattle, if you're interested. Besides the Amtrak Cascades, Edmonds and Everett are also served by the Amtrak Empire Builder and the Sounder North Line commuter trains on Mondays through Fridays. The only time you would see the Sounder up here on the weekends is if the Mariners or the Seahawks are having a game downtown. It was cold, overcast, with some light rain today, so not ideal to give the scenery the justice it deserves. So we're approaching our first stop on this trip, Edmonds, Washington. The name of this stretch between Seattle and Vancouver was originally named the Mount Baker International. Our next stop will be Everett, Washington. The Amtrak Cascades brand wasn't founded until April 1st, 1994. Everything from Vancouver to the north of Everett is served by the Amtrak Cascades only, because Everett is the northern terminus for the Sounder commuter trains, and the Empire Builder is going to make its turn to the east in order to head to Chicago. Even though we're leaving Everett, some of the scenery is expected to get nicer because we're leaving the Seattle metro area and crossing through the Washington countryside. Due to timing, our windows were not cleaned prior to departure, therefore, that also clouded the view. Time to check out the restroom. There is a restroom in almost every coach on this train set. Once you lock it, the lights turn on. I don't recall seeing that on Renfe Talgos. Talgo is a Spanish rail manufacturer headquartered in Spain. The restroom is very spacious, and everything is in working order. That's the tour of the restroom. Let's check out the seat. The table is large enough to eat a meal or get work done. The power outlets are between the seats. Coach class on the Cascades trains is 2x2, like second class on Renfe Talgo train sets, and there's only one armrest between the seats. A lot of the Pacific Northwest is very cool to see by train. The reading light controls are at each seat, and you can control the sun entering if you want to, but on this trip, putting that down wasn't required. And here are the coat hangers. These controls are if you want to listen to a movie playing on the TVs hanging over the aisle. Bags can easily be stored on the shelves. For passengers traveling to Vancouver, they get this pink card that hangs over the seats. If there's a small 2 on the bottom, then that tells the crew that both passengers are heading to Vancouver. We got ours in Seattle. As we see on the ceiling, there are TVs above the aisle. Larger luggage that can't go on the shelves can be stored on this rack by the door. This is the cafe car on the train set where you can get a meal if you are hungry. I thought the cafe car was the only place where you could see both sides of the train, but the coach behind it is more like an observation car where passengers can come and watch the view go by. Seeing a lot of boats out here means that fishing is big in the Pacific Northwest, especially fishing for salmon and halibut. Washington does have delicious salmon. Crossing between coaches is a breeze on the Talgos Series 8, but I can hear noise from the mechanisms by the wheels. This screen tells the ending destination, local time, speed, and the coach's number. We are nearing our next station stop, Stanwood, Washington. The Amtrak Cascades is the only train that stops in the towns of Stanwood, Mount Vernon, and Bellingham, Washington. We're continuing our northbound journey to Vancouver, Canada. We had to stop to let the southbound Cascades train heading to Seattle pass. This one had all Horizon coaches with an F40PH cabbage leading the train and an SC44 Charger on the rear. The Talgos Series 8s also have high-speed Wi-Fi and the seats can recline. The end of the 13-car train set has a cab car, which makes push-pull operations easier. One train set was named the Mount Bachelor and the other was named the Mount Jefferson. Amtrak Talgos were named after Cascade Mountains. The Talgos also tilt on curves, just like the Renfe ones. We're coming into our next station stop of Mount Vernon, Washington. The Washington Department of Transportation and the Oregon Department of Transportation both fund the Amtrak Cascades corridor, which is why their logos are printed on the SC44 Chargers and the Talgos Series 8s on the Cascades route. All the current Amtrak Cascades rolling stock will be retired pretty soon because Siemens is creating new Amtrak Aero train sets. The first place they will enter service is on the Cascades corridor, which is very exciting. As of this video, the very first one completed construction and is currently being tested at the Transportation Technology Center in Pueblo, Colorado. Service is expected to begin on the Cascades corridor in January of 2026. This is very scenic. I think the most scenic part of this journey will come after we leave Bellingham, Washington. And speaking of the town of Bellingham, we are nearing it. For passengers heading to Vancouver, this is where the train crew will do its passport checks, and each passenger will be given a Canadian Arrival Declaration form you are required to fill out in order to enter Canada. Once you arrive in Vancouver, you will hand the form to the Canadian Customs at Vancouver's Pacific Central Station. During the customs inspection of the train, the restrooms and cafe will not be open. It's almost lunchtime, but I can wait until the custom process of the train is done. This is Bellingham, Washington, the last stop in Washington before entering Canada. One thing that makes this place unique is that there's a ferry that can take you from here straight to the town of Whittier in Alaska, a town that is served by the Alaskan Railroad. But it runs once every 2 weeks. It's starting to drizzle a bit more as we leave Bellingham, Washington. If curious about the ferry I just talked about is like, it's that blue and white boat on the left, and it doesn't stop in Canada. They hand out the Canadian Customs entry forms after the train leaves Bellingham. Now that the cafe is open, it's time for lunch. They take both cash and card. If you get a drink and you want ice, the ice vending is right here. For lunch today, I purchased cheese pizza with the ginger ale. Remember, these are frozen pizzas they are serving to the passengers. We are nearing the US/Canada border. It is clearly obvious, not just because there is a tower with the US flag on one side and the Canadian flag on the other, but because near the track is a road with the customs office, and that's how drivers go through the customs process. For us, we're passing it. Our customs is at Vancouver Pacific Central Station. This is also the very first time I've stepped foot into Canada. Filling out the entry form to get into Canada does take time, so you could be at the border for a while to complete it, but if you come in by rail, you can do it when the train is moving. The same goes if you came in by plane or ferry. That white building with the US and Canadian flag on it is called the Peace Arch, and that marks the border between the United States and Canada. On the side, it says, "May these gates never be closed." Welcome to Canada. Besides the Amtrak Cascades, the other Amtrak train that goes into Canada is called the Maple Leaf, which travels from New York City to Toronto. Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories that are all pieces of the country. British Columbia is the province on the southwestern part of the country, and that's where Vancouver sits. In fact, Vancouver is not that far away from the US/Canada border. If you do make purchases at the cafe car, they don't accept the Canadian dollar. They only accept the US dollar. At the time, $1 US is equal to $1.38 in Canadian dollars, which means the dollar is weak and you lose money on the exchange. We are nearing Vancouver, British Columbia. For the rail custom unloading process, the checked bags get unloaded from the train first, then the business class passengers can get off, and then the coach passengers. Even though the Talgos Series 8 has buttons that allow you to open the door after the train makes a complete stop, the train crew has to open the doors to let everyone off in Canada. This train has a designated platform in Pacific Central Station, and the platform and the tracks are fenced off from everything else in the station. You will clear Canadian customs after walking into the station from the platform. The rain made the temperature out here a bit cooler than in Seattle. For my thoughts on this trip, first, I am very grateful to be able to film the Talgos Series 8 before the Aero train sets take over the Cascades route, and I honestly believe that we need more international train routes like this outside of Europe. If you enjoyed this video, please like this video, comment, subscribe, and follow on TikTok and Instagram for more. International train travel is a rarity but is a unique way to cross written international borders. Thanks for watching.